Hey, how's it going today? We're going to be talking about the fifth season. This is a trilogy. There's three books. This is the first book by N.K. Jemisin. I'd never heard of this. My wife had heard of this and thought it was a cool idea and a cool concept and bought all three books. And sometimes we do a two-person book club where we read the same book at the same time. So in December of 2025, we read the first one, the fifth season. The fifth season has a lot going on. It's a 400 or 500 page book. It's pretty hefty. It's one of those books that has a map in the front, and if you know, then you know. I love maps in the front of books. If a book has a map in the front, it like doubles my chance that I might buy it. The fifth season, how to explain it? It takes place in a place that seems like Earth, or maybe an altered version of Earth or a similar version, with humans. The map, by the way, doesn't look like anything that I would recognize as being on Earth, but it's kind of confusing of, is this way in the past or way in the future of Earth? But let's just say it's like a fantasy made up similar world as Earth. There's this one big continent called the Stillness, and there are earthquakes all the time, and there are volcanoes all the time. That's kind of the joke. They call it the Stillness, even though it's never still. Within this world, there are regular people who live and farm. The technology is sort of like medieval. They have some sort of weapons. They have knives. They have wheels and carts. They have horses, but they don't. I think they hint about electricity, but they don't really. Maybe they're on the cusp of like having electricity. So that's kind of where you're at. It's a lot of milking cows and taking the wheat down to the market type of environment. So within this world, there's people that are just regular people going about their lives. They have a bar, they have a little tavern or whatever. They have a restaurant. And then there's people, and I don't really know how things are pronounced, but I think it's pronounced orogene. There are people who are orogenes who have the talent of orogeny, O-R. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. You can read it and pronounce it how you want. But basically, these people are able to sense the earth. They can sense when an earthquake is going to happen. They can control earthquakes, like mentally. They can just like push an earthquake down or build an earthquake up. Same thing with like volcanoes. With anything rocks and minerals, they can control rocks and minerals. This is really cool, but it's terrifying to the average person, right? Because if they can control earthquakes, obviously this person has like massive power. They could literally level an entire city. How do people get these powers? We don't know. Some people are just born with it, some aren't. So, on the one hand, if a person's a good person and they have this power, they can stop earthquakes from destroying cities. If they're a bad person, they can use their power to destroy entire cities or individual people. They're basically, it's kind of confusing because they can control the earth and like minerals and rocks and magma and lava, but then they also can control heat and cold, and somehow they pull energy, like they pull heat, they use heat as their internal fuel to do all of this, right? So they actually can suck all the heat out of a room. They call it icing. They can ice the room, they can ice a person, and people that are really practiced at it and talented at it can intentionally kill people just by thinking about it, basically. People who aren't trained, such as a 10-year-old child, 10-year-old child gets pushed off the swing, she freaks out and gets mad and kills every kid in the room, right? So there's this very complicated situation. There's another group involved called the Guardians. Guardians basically take, I'm gonna use so they have a word in there called Roga, and Roga is basically a slur for the orogenes. But I'm going to use the word Roga, just not a disrespect, but because I can't pronounce the other one. But like the Guardians take the Rogas and take them into a school and train them, and then basically use them it's like a government program type of situation where they're like, hey, we're going to train you, and then now you can go excavate this land for this community. You can go and dig out the bay to help ships come in for this other city. You can be stationed at this one place and stop any earthquakes that might, destroy the city. Guardians have crazy, creepy, weird powers that are really unclear, but they're like the only ones who, can protect Aroga from the regular people, but also protect the people from, like, they're the only ones that can kill the Rogas. They can kill the Origins. By the way, sidebar, Roga is sort of like the N-word. So there's also this whole, everything that's going on is sort of, there's all these sort of like social commentary on racism, because, they're treated very unfairly and people hate them just for being born how they are. And see, now I feel bad using the R word, using Roga, because it's basically the N word. Like, people use it as a slur, but then when they're with each other, they can use it as a term of endearment. So there's a lot of social commentary going on. There's all this like social hierarchy of who's better than who and who's above who. There's some people, of course, that, like, they're so afraid of people that have these powers that if you find out your child has this power, you basically either call a guardian and have them come, like, kidnap your child and take your child away and you'll never see them again, or you just kill the child, because the potential damage that this child could do, it could level an entire community. So it's horrific. It's tragic that you would, like, kill a child. The child hasn't done anything wrong. But that's the world that they live in, where if you don't kill the child might accidentally kill your entire community. So this is the world that they live in. So it's a really, really fascinating concept. If anyone out there has read it and you want to talk in the comments and explain some of it to me, that would be great. There's a lot of it I didn't understand. I would assume, I haven't looked at all, but I would assume YouTube has a ton of videos on this book, because there's a lot to talk about. And I've started the second book, and there's even more to talk about. So it's really, really good. One thing that I found confusing is it jumps back and forth in time. So this book is basically telling 3 different stories at once, and it doesn't ever say 5 years ago or 10 years ahead. It just jumps into another character and you're like, oh, that's the character from before, that's before that earthquake happened, that's before that city was destroyed, or that's after the city was destroyed. So there's 3 different, like, timelines being told at the same time, and then by the end of the book they all come together, where you realize how all 3 of these stories fit together, and you realize which characters are which, and which characters belong to which family or whatever. Not my favorite fantasy novel that I've ever read, but very unique and very interesting. It's really fascinating within their culture and within their society how these people with these powers can be loved and hated equally. There's also this other group called the Stone Eaters that nobody even understands them at all. They just kind of appear and disappear and can, like, float through the earth. So there's some crazy stuff going on, but very, very creative. A very interesting, I think I said sci-fi. It's not sci-fi, it's like fantasy novel, but it's not like dragons and dwarves, so it's not like a Tolkien-style fantasy novel, but it is a fantasy novel where, like, certain people have powers, certain people, it's publicly known that they have powers and you can hire them to use their powers, and then other people are living in secret, like, don't tell anyone I have this power, I don't want them to kill me. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, and a lot of, like, heartbreak moments where you're like, fuck, like, people die and you're like, anyone but that guy, don't let that guy die, and then that guy dies. So there's some of those moments too. But yeah, big, hefty book if you want to, like, devote a month of your life to a fantasy novel. Like I said, not my favorite ever that I've read, but definitely I'm happy that I read it. I'm going to finish the trilogy.